Uh,
All right, we are back again for another
mm,
round.
yeah.
All right, well, this week's podcast is going to be brought to you by some hardcore political frustrations and nonsense, um, as well as thrifted sweaters, one of which I'm wearing right now, but you can't see because this is a podcast, unless you're on YouTube.
You could probably see it then. This week's podcast is also brought to you by empty buses and the wrong kind of eggs again. So
I am your host, Madison.
I am your other host, Jesse James. Uh, yeah, I take the bus a lot for work and for everything else I do, and I sent you a picture before we started of how my bus was yesterday.
Yeah,
That was my
past
bus to
crazy.
work. Uh, if you
Dang.
zoom, you should zoom in on the other person there.
I saw.
There's one other person on this bus, and they were in like full crisis gear.
Yeah, he looks like he's
Uh,
sitting as far away from you as possible.
no, that is how everybody's been on the bus. I mean, that
Yeah.
is how you're supposed to be on the bus lately. There's also been there's like a liquid drip pattern on all the seats, the like metal seats. I'm hoping that that is not just like rain over time. I think it's probably them spraying antiseptic. uh,
Oh,
yeah,
yeah. You're probably right.
but it's been interesting. I mentioned this last week, but I'm in the Kirkland area, and that is the area that is like, I think I mentioned that last week, right? It's
Yeah.
the area that is sickness central for all the COVID shit. Um,
uh, all of the roommates that I had when I lived in Kirkland we've all been exchanging articles and patting ourselves on the back about getting out in time.
yeah. Uh, I mean, it's what I think the case count this morning was 71 total. So it's definitely not like insurmountable, but it is also like it's like 8 to 10 people a day usually that are getting confirmed. So it's definitely like spreading enough to be a concern.
Yeah.
Um, and the I've been taking the bus all week, which I got a ride out from one of my friends yesterday from work, and I have it set up for the next 2 weeks. I'm going to be getting like a card in and out, and then I have a week off. So, provided I don't get sick in the next 2 weeks, I will have another week of probably. It was that's another thing I'll talk about, but I had a vacation planned that was like a small road trip, and that got canceled. And
Oh no.
airlines are fuckers. So, like,
Oh no.
if you
Oh.
if if you happen to be a poor person and getting a plane ticket for a like specific event, if you uh, aren't sure about the state of like the COVID stuff, just don't plan anything because when I went to see if I could get any money back, first off, it was a $200 ticket. It's like the cheapest plane ticket you can get going to like a one-way location,
Mhm.
and they offered to waive the $125 cancellation fee. And for reference, I paid a $20 insurance payment on top of what I paid
Oh,
originally.
seriously. Oh.
So plane insurance is nothing. That's like if they cancel your flight because they don't feel like it, you can get on another flight, I guess. I don't know what that's for, but it they offered to waive the cancellation fee that was over half the price of the ticket already. The consolation for not taking the flight is that I can get a rebate up to the amount of money that my flight was only between now and June 1st, and I have to be flying between those dates, not buying the ticket. And then that money goes away. I also have to call a separate number and set up the potential flight with them first to see if they will apply the money to that flight. So
Wow.
just fuck it. Like, don't mess with airlines.
Do you feel like
right now?
Do you feel like throwing this airline under the bus by naming them?
Not really, because my friend who I was also traveling with, they were using a completely different airline, and the exact same thing happened to them. I think they actually didn't get a rebate. I think that their ticket was just fully no money back, nothing.
Wow.
Yeah, just don't fly, I guess, until there's some level of presumed safety in all areas. They're just gonna fuck you. Like, it's not gonna work out. But this is maybe a great time to present to you this. Oh man, the smell. So what I have here is a Pabst Blue Ribbon hard coffee.
Hell yeah.
I cracked into it, and it actually smells fantastic. This is troubling.
It's the intersection of all my interests. Can you please give us a taste test?
Yeah, let's see here.
Ooh.
Yeah, that is unfortunately fantastic.
Yay!
And
You've done it.
It's not incredibly alcoholic, but it's not less alcoholic than their beer.
Really? What's the percentage? Is it like
5%?
Mm.
I think the beer is 6.
I do have to say, I'm really, really excited about the fact that they've gone in the coffee direction and not the hey, let's also make a hard seltzer like every other beer brand right now.
No, and straight up, this one on the outside of it says the original Pabst Blue Ribbon excuse me? Oh, okay, hard iced coffee. For a second, I thought that was hand iced coffee. It specifically states it has milk and it has a rich, creamy blend and whipped vanilla flavor. They're leaning heavy into the like dairy-esque feel of it.
Even the colors on it invoke a very dairy coffee sort of vibe.
Weirdly enough, I would put this flavor over the Starbucks like store drinks.
Oh,
sure.
Really?
Yeah, that's surprising.
Interesting. I don't like those very much. I think they're always too sweet for me. So maybe
this one, the sweetness and the alcohol mixed together a tiny bit, so that helps. Yeah, that's surprisingly good. So I'll definitely be drinking that very quickly.
Did you find that at QFC?
Yeah.
Dang, okay. We don't have any QFCs, but I'll keep my eyes out.
Oh, I don't think you have to go to a QFC for it. I've heard people say they've seen it at Safeways as well.
Yeah, we don't have any like Kroger not restaurants, chains here. We have a Winco and we have we have a Rose Hours. I don't think that's Kroger though. I think it's something else, but we'll see.
Being somebody who worked briefly at Kroger, let me find that list of associated Kroger brands because it's a lot.
They're probably related. I'll probably be able to find it. Evan will be ecstatic about
if
this.
what? If there's
if
a
we
Kroger.
have access to a PBR coffee drink.
Yeah, I think you guys should get deep into it if you're able to.
I think we should.
All right, just the internet is stupid all the time. Just give me a list. Why do I even have internet if I can't get a list of Kroger stores? All right. So their banner chains are Dillion's, Food for Less, Fred Meyer Jewelers. I don't know why those have to be separate. Fry's, Harris Teeter, Home Chef, King Supers, Kroger, The Little Clinic. They shouldn't have clinics.
Right.
Mariano's, QFC, Ralph's, Roundy's, Ruler Foods, Smith's, and Vitacost. And then their former chains, which I think oftentimes will retain the name for a while if they're like associated, are Barney's, Call of Foods, Child's, Henke's, Hillander Foods, Hiller's, Hooks, Kessel, Crambo, nice, Loaf and Jug,
I like that.
nice, Main and Vine, Market Basket, Scott's, Super RX, and Turkey Hill, nice.
Okay.
And then under Call of Foods, they have Bell Markets, and under Loaf and Jug, they have Quick Shop, Quick Stop, and Tom Thumb. So if any of those names show
up. Rose Hours is owned by URM Stores.
Huh.
And they're okay. It's only supermarkets in like Idaho, Montana, Oregon, and Washington. And their other ones are Family Foods, Harvest Foods, Yolks Fresh Market, and Super One Foods. So we have a couple of those, but I'm really surprised that they're not related. But
yeah, well, Kroger is huge, but not huge enough to break into the Idaho market, I guess.
Nah, we got our own stuff going on. We got a Super One Foods. We don't need your... Oh God, Super One. Actually, I want to have a little sidebar for my like Coeur d'Alene heads. Super One is actually the fucking best because it was right next to my high school, and you could go there and get like a 25-cent soft serve cone.
All right,
which was pretty awesome.
That's a good ass price for a soft serve cone,
right? That's pretty good.
Speaking of soft serve, I received this in the mail yesterday.
Ooh.
Not Yuck. Really good timing for that.
No, that's pretty bad.
Also, the Bloomberg campaign was sending these directly to me, not resident, so that's strange.
Yeah. Well.
I mean, I've donated to Bernie, but I don't make a lot of political like anythings. I don't have like declarations on like politics really anywhere.
You probably just bought the information off of some other information seller.
This though, I feel like I should put this in a frame and put it up on the wall. It is a picture that is split in half vertically. The top half is blue and the bottom half is red. Also, the top half is blue but slightly larger, which I feel like somebody in design was like patting themselves on the back for, because design people are proud of certain things. And in the top, it has a picture trying to make Bloomberg look like a human being, and it says "the boss," and then it says "versus" in the middle, and then "the bully," and then it has a picture of Donald Trump, but notably
visibly smaller.
It's smaller, but also Trump doesn't look that weird in that picture either for Trump.
Yeah.
So I don't know what their deal is with this, but look at Bloomberg's face. That's not
gross.
That's not appealing.
No, I don't like it. I like the purposeful deletion of most of Donald Trump's shoulders.
Yeah.
So he's like, hey, got no shoulders.
Also, Donald Trump's like my height, and Bloomberg is like your height. So this is just not accurate.
That's just not accurate. Oh.
That's like if they had a picture with Tom Cruise in the top section, and he looked like real big and burly, and then down in the bottom they had a picture of, I don't know, like a Dave Bautista, and they like shaved his shoulders down to be like the same width of his head, and then made him little tiny in the bottom.
Mm-hmm. I feel like. Go ahead.
I'm hoping when they resume shooting for the next Mission Impossible, that's the poster.
Oh, I think that would be very good if that was the case. I think just based on the visuals of that postcard, Bloomberg really took to heart all of Trump's insults about his height and gave them a note that was like, hey, if you could make me a little bit taller, that would be preferable.
It's like the boss I had at the coffee shop who demanded to be on an Apple box or like a crate in order to appear taller than everybody else in the photo, and also let somebody go because they had moved a blackboard over his picture and left it open because it's where we stored coffee. As crazy.
This person sounds like they're very secure in themselves and definitely don't have any complexes whatsoever.
This person, I won't say what coffee chain they run, but their name is Jeff, so you figure it out. Jeff, you suck. You're an asshole.
Oh, shit.
Short fuck.
Do
you have any political ranting you want to move into from that?
Yeah, I have a lot, but actually going directly, or speaking of Bloomberg, I really just wanted to shout out Bloomberg for backstory. As of now, Bloomberg is out of the race. Amy, Pete, Warren. So it's just Bernie and Biden now. But Bloomberg did like really, really bad. So I just wanted to shout out Bloomberg for having the most. I think he got like 44 delegates or something like that. I didn't really look, but the most expensive and smallest amount of delegates in history, or obviously the most expensive delegates in history.
Yeah.
Because he spent so much fucking money, but God, I'm glad that that's done. We don't have to think about that anymore.
This is secondhand, but I heard that, so he picked up, I think the bulk of American Samoa, which, I mean, the United States does not listen to any islands really associated with it. Hawaii the most, and they don't give a fuck about Hawaii. And I heard that based on how much money they spent in American Samoa itself, per vote they got, like person, not like delegate, it was like $250 is how much they would have spent per vote, which that's
really?
That's hard money if that's true.
Yeah. I mean, maybe we should just give everybody $250 instead of running for president.
Isn't that basically what happened with the war criminal? I mean, they all are, but George Bush Jr. When he got into office, I think the first time he added $100 to everybody's tax return or whatever. That was like a thing.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it was like a weird
bribery.
I'll give you $100 if you make me the president.
Andrew Yang, shout out. Well, that's a little bit different, but similar. Wow, that's funny. I didn't know about that. So yeah.
I have an interesting thing that I want to ask you.
Yes, please.
Okay, so take into account the entire list of people that you remember, at least from the Democratic nominees.
Okay.
Name your top three and your person who would come in fourth for president.
Who I want to vote for?
Yeah.
So top three is probably Bernie, and second probably Warren.
Yeah.
Um,
Who's the third?
God, I honestly,
Uh-huh. I
yeah,
did
you
this
know it's a
last night.
bad sign you can't even rank it to third. Oh God, I don't even know. I can't even remember who all was. I don't even know. Everybody else after that seems like not great. I can't even
Unfortunately, you
remember.
have to pick two more.
Maybe I don't know much about his policies because he was out so early, but Julian Castro endorsed Warren, so like
Yeah.
maybe if they're similar, I would go with him.
I mean,
I don't
they're
know anything about him though, so I probably would be taking that back after doing any sort of research. I don't know. I don't like anyone else.
well,
It's hard. Ugh.
you need two
What?
more.
Okay. But
I
you're
can't
still
let you
gonna make
go.
me do this?
Yeah.
Okay. Let me pull up a list of who they
Yeah,
are
no, that's
at
fine.
least.
I'm having to pull up a list for maybe the funniest reason on my end as well. So,
Uh, I want to hear your top two.
my
Well,
top two,
yeah.
it's Sanders and then Warren.
Okay.
Uh, that I might change that. I'm gonna say Sanders is my top. Um, where the fuck is this dude? I'm looking at a list too, and I should know his name, and I fucking don't. So I'm having to look him up. Uh, I think I might go Sanders and then Jay Inslee. Honestly,
Oh yeah, I forgot about Jay Inslee. Yeah.
yeah,
Okay. I think I would probably. He would at least be in my top three. I don't really know. I would have to compare him and Warren more,
yeah.
but I forgot about him.
Um,
Uh, my fourth Tulsi.
Tulsi Gabbard was the Republican pick for a while.
She should be.
She's
She should. She
she's
should be.
very pro troops, but she's also very pro like dictator. um,
Yeah.
so
Um,
uh, Jay Inslee, I'm just looking up some of his credentials because I was trying to remember. That also, Jay Inslee was like head of this area for a long time. The fact that I
mhm.
can't ever remember his name is frustrating. Uh, I still remember Gary Locke's name, and he was the previous mayor by a full person.
Oh
Because
wow.
Gregoire was mayor like after Locke. Uh, Locke was mayor from 97 or governor, sorry, from 97 to 2005. And I remember his name because
Better.
he's Gary Locke is the one who went over to China to help them with their reconstruction of environmental impact stuff.
Oh, okay.
So Gary Locke is a big part of why China is doing better with their environmental everything.
That's cool.
Uh, I don't remember shit about Gregoire, but Jay Inslee, his big like points besides environmental issues was raising workers' wages and stuff like that. So like
Yeah.
I feel like I agree with him enough to where he's probably my second choice, even though I am purely picking him because I think Warren has proven to be much more into capitalism than she kind of let on at the start.
Yeah. That's true.
But Warren's my third choice. And honestly, I think it's a stupid choice still, but I think my fourth place maybe would go to Andrew Yang, but I think he'd be a terrible president. I just think I'd rather have him as an option than the rest of these people.
Yeah.
At least he would
Yeah.
force people to
I
talk about some stuff, but he would probably like kill us all somehow. Man, Jay Inslee really does look like a jack-o'-lantern, though. That's too bad.
where's this picture? I just had it. Yeah, he kind of does.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I do actually really like him for one very specific thing. He went on Love It or Leave It, and during their like rant portion of the show,
Yeah.
said something to the effect of Harry Potter is extremely overrated in popular
Nice.
culture, and I really agree
I'm
with
very
that.
pro that.
So I like that a lot. Um,
I still
I'm
like
looking through the
the.
candidates, and I still don't know who my fourth would be.
Yeah, it's a tough one. Uh,
Marianne Williamson.
Yikes. Yeah, I mean, honestly, that's probably not too far off from picking Yang as a fourth. So
Yeah, I mean, Yang's a little more grounded, I think.
I don't know.
Marianne Williamson.
Yang is still a business owner. Like he's still an independently wealthy person who just wanted to be president, but he seemed like he was so willing to try and get people to like him that there's a chance he might do the right stuff. Uh, I think Marianne Williamson would start to like see the lines and the stars, and it would tell her to like, I don't know, set stuff on fire or something eventually.
It would definitely be an exciting presidency, but I think I would have to choose Yang over her, and I think I would put him as my fourth because of his drug policies.
Yeah.
I think those are really progressive and really cool. He was gonna decriminalize all drugs, I think, and then have like safe injection sites and
Mm-hmm.
places like that. And I think that would be cool.
Honestly, Yang's like point of view, as much as he was like made fun of, and rightfully, like he was not prepared to like do any kind of debates or anything. Like it's like if I showed up and was like, hey, people should have a wage given to them and then they can work for more. And then people would be like, who are you, asshole? That's what it felt like with him. And like he basically wanted to try and put through all the things that Canada has that work and then add something that he knew financially could work. And that was his whole platform. And like, I think that's fine. Like, honestly, if we could do things a little more like, I don't know, high cost and slower moving, but good for everybody, uh, that would be fantastic.
Yeah. Speaking of high cost, it just reminded me of a clip I saw yesterday of AOC going on The View and talking to Meghan McCain.
Oh, cool.
And
Meghan McCain's great.
I know she's my favorite. And they were talking about Medicare for all, and Meghan was like, "Well, you're saying that this is going to cost like whatever $1 trillion over 10 years." And then AOC was like, "Do you ever notice how Democratic plans or like Democratic plans and proposals are measured in like the budget over 10 years, and Republican budgets and policy proposals, it's always like by year, and it ends up being more over time because you're paying for all this extra." Yeah, I thought it was really cool, but yeah, I can't wait for AOC to be of age because I really want her to run in the
Yeah,
future.
I wonder, I think that she would be fantastic for like standing up for shit that matters. I also think that having a woman of color who is smart and like incredibly proactive would be such a huge shift in how we see our like executive that would
Yeah.
be fantastic.
Hmm.
Um, I don't know. Same things I was worried about when Obama was originally running, uh, when it was becoming clear that like the amount of racism in this country that you don't see every day is extreme and not just present.
Hmm.
Um, I
It's
think
scary.
I think with the amount of people who believe that she's like a secret Muslim terrorist or whatever, uh, we would be in that position again of wondering like, is somebody going to try to like kill this person to make sure they don't take office?
Hmm.
Uh, I'm ambiently slightly worried about that with like the Sanders stuff, just because it's such a threat to so many people who have people who listen to them that
Hmm.
it kind of turns into this weird like all the poor people think that like he's evil as well because why wouldn't they? Like you have to literally go out and try to like learn something about how his specific politics affect things in order to not be like anti uh like socialism essentially.
Yeah.
And that's rough because like the other side doesn't need that. Like a lot of people start their life just knowing what church is of some kind, whether it's church or mosque or whatever. And like conservatism is just how they're told life is. And then, like, even with my parents, where it's like, well, you know that like communism and socialism are childish, right? Like, that's the message I get from most people I know. And it's just not true. Like,
Hmm.
the amount of I don't know. Like my response to that kind of criticism of something that I believe in is to go research it more so I can figure out, well, am I wrong or not? And every time I research it more, I come back with, oh, okay, I was actually being too harsh on it. There's a lot of things that are entirely the fault of the United States government, and that sucks.
Yeah.
Because we're the bad guy everywhere all the time because we are essentially acting as the world's boss for the last 100 years, and that fucking sucks.
Hmm.
But
Yeah, that's something I'm pretty concerned about just generally all the time. Like I feel like maybe it's just not publicized or talked about, but I feel like I'm constantly worried that something like that is going to happen to either Bernie or AOC or Ilhan Omar specifically.
yeah,
And at this point, I'm kind of surprised that nothing like that has happened. I mean, just this week at one of his rallies, a like guy showed up with a Nazi flag
yeah.
and was protesting. So yeah, it's a fun, great time.
Well, and
Um,
the Nazi flag stuff is even worse because one of the main, like Alex Jones style through lines is that that is Nazism. So the reporting from that kind of person is going to be they're showing their true colors because they're getting close to winning to try
yeah,
and like stir up as much anti sentiment as possible. And once you start telling people, oh, this guy's a Nazi, then they're like, oh, well, we can kill him. Like, that's just how people work when it comes to that stuff, which
hmm,
is shitty. But there's not
yeah,
much you can do about it because unless you have the money, you're never going to have that kind of reach. Those are some good ass shoulder pads. I just noticed.
thank you,
I
thanks.
I kind of want things with giant shoulder pads in them just to like give the weird effect that that gives for men.
It gives the illusion that I have like really good posture when I'm constantly hunched over. But
you
yeah,
just you just need to wear your gun holster more and it'll work out fine.
I
Uh,
know.
look at these obvious shoulder pads here.
Yeah, those are pretty good. Not as good as mine, but they're good.
Yeah.
Yeah. I guess so. piggybacking off of that whole conversation, one of the things I wanted to talk about this week, in particular, is that either yesterday or the day before, the New York Times published an article with the headline, "As Bernie Sanders pushed for closer ties, Soviet Union spotted opportunity." And basically, what that article was about is they went out of their way to dig up a bunch of public record documents that were from 1988, when he traveled from Vermont to their sister city, or when he was mayor. He like established a sister city relationship.
I think he took his honeymoon there.
Yeah,
like
I think you're
I
right.
think that was the reasoning behind it.
Yeah, because his wife was there too. But so all the documents are stuff like hotel stubs and like his correspondence with them saying like, "Hey, you guys should come over. It'd be totally cool. I'll come over too. That would be sick if we could be like friends and not nuclear adversaries." That's basically his whole intent behind it. And then they found some like one or some Russian documents that were basically, they had written something to the effect of, "We can use this situation for our advantage to push propaganda."
Sure.
And that is like the language that they use. And I'm like, okay, well, that seems to be the point on both sides, to push propaganda, if propaganda you're considering for Bernie Sanders is like anti-war propaganda.
Also,
then
see,
I guess that's happening.
anytime a notable figure who is not white in the US does anything.
Yeah.
Like, that is may as well be all of the Republican Party and like half of the Democratic Party or Democrat Party just dogpiling on it to try and turn it into propaganda for their own shit.
Yeah. Especially in this article, they really, really pushed the use of the word propaganda specifically to make it seem like Bernie was a pawn in this Russian scheme to push like their Soviet propaganda on us, when it was really a mutually seemingly beneficial sister city relationship that still, I think, exists to this day. And not only that, but he established during his time as mayor 2 different relationships. They're also a sister city. They also have one in Nicaragua, I think, and like a bunch more since then. So seems pretty disingenuous for the New York Times to be like, "Hey, look at this time where," and the headline is very, very like misleading and manipulative. They've gotten when they posted about it on Twitter, like all the replies are saying, "Hey, this is really disingenuous and really not even journalism." Because what you're doing is you're taking documents and then you're framing them in a way that is inauthentic, that's like just straight up not true. And it's like so blatantly obvious what they're trying to do, and it's very frustrating. So that's my I like am generally, I guess, okay with the New York Times, but that was really like, you're not even trying to hide your your motivation with this one. So
also, I'm not really, I think the New York Times has a deep well of like people that do good work. I think they also have a deep well of people who do terrible work. But a large portion of that is that they are one of the news places that strives to be bipartisan. And when you don't base your news off of people who are good and like reliable at reporting, and instead base it off of trying to make sure that you hire people who have the like conservative view and the liberal view, when conservatism pulls so far away from the center, your conservative pundits are likely to be people like what's his name, the fucking bedbug, the guy who Did you hear about that story? It was man.
What story are you talking about?
So there was a I'm gonna look up his name so I don't fuck this up too bad. There was a story to like no, it was a tweet that was meant to be like funny, but they had like, or it might have been not funny. It might have been complaining. Either way, uh, they were like having to fumigate a portion of the New York Times. I think it was their like filming studio that they have there for bed bugs at one point. And somebody put up a tweet that works there that was like fumigating for bed bugs, and then somebody else responded to the tweet who was like a professor at some like state university or something that said, I think he might have been in like a Boston U or something like that, that said this specific guy was infesting that office or whatever.
That's funny.
But I want to get his name right because he is a perfect example of what I'm talking about. Because what he did, was his name like Brett or something? What he ended up doing was, let's see. I'm just going to type in the name Brett Stevens because that sounds right in my head.
I think.
Yeah, that's the guy. Okay, so Brett Lewis Stevens. Yeah, he's like a Republican leaning writer for the New York Times. So his response to being called a bed bug, which was one of those things of like, this guy sucks. The response was that he emailed that guy back with like a note that was like, and it was an email. It was a note that was like, hey, something, something, why don't you come spend some time with my family and then try to say that to my face? Because that takes real courage and all this stuff about like he's not really acting in a way that's becoming of somebody and all this like civility kind of stuff.
Yeah.
But he CC'd that professor's boss when he sent him that email.
Wow.
Like the most dipshit, like this guy literally just razzed him on Twitter. Like who gives a shit?
Yeah.
And then he tried to get that guy fired because of it. He then moved on to try to relate I think it was an article he wrote shortly after that. He tried to relate that guy calling him a bed bug to a reference in something written in Germany during the rise of the Nazis, referring to bed bugs infesting buildings, and trying to say that that guy was trying to like use this weird psychology move of some kind to infer that he should be burned out of this like structure and he's actually a Nazi. And then it turns out that that section was like that original writing was maybe actually even referring to real bed bugs and not Jewish people, which they thought was the case. But he linked from his article to, I think it was Google Books, to a book that talked about that specific like mention of bed bugs, but he had linked it with the search term still in the bar.
Oh no.
That was Jews as bed bugs. So he had like linked his searching for this thing to try and like denounce this guy using this like convoluted shit in a very extra boomery way too, which is always nice.
That's
basically
nice.
Getting into a Facebook fight with this guy who inferred that he sucks. And Brett Stevens does suck. He has terrible opinions. And there's
Sounds
there's
like
an
a stand-up dude.
yeah, there's another guy named like Friedlander, I think, that works for New York Times that is at least as shitty, and he's recently written an article that was it was like quietly anti-Sanders. It was like, what we really need is to all come together in the middle, like that same centrist shit that pushed us so far to the right when Obama became president. And instead of like taking this idea of like, let's put people like together because unity, whatever, he lists out all of the like candidates for the current nomination for the Democratic candidate and what position they could be in the White House, but sort of inferring that, well, Biden should be president, though. But then what if Warren was like, what he said, like some form of like public relations, where it's like, okay, so no power, just talking, sure.
Yeah.
But then he put a bunch of Republicans in as well, who are like notably pieces of shit, as like, well, we'll reach across the aisle and like bring everybody in, which is the most like, absolutely not. Like, I think one of the people he said was like Ted Cruz. And it's like, why would you put him in a White House position? Like, why? If you're saying you're into the Democratic Party to get Trump out, and then you say, well, we'll just put like Ted Cruz in here or whatever. Like, what? It's infuriating. Anyway, Stevens and Friedlander, I think it's Friedlander, it might be like Friedman. They're terrible. They're both like weird picks for like centrist to Republican points of view, and everything that they talk about is like, it's in the New York Times, so clearly it's more Democrat leaning, right? Except they're like trying to get people on the Democrat side to like stop using all this liberal language and start just live your life like the West Wing and imagine that if people talk at each other a whole bunch, it'll just fix it. Which is,
that's how it goes.
That whole idea of like, if we talk about it, it'll work out, is really appealing to people who are older and becoming more conservative, but also had even more conservative parents. And it seems like that is becoming clear as I get older, where, I mean, maybe that's a good sign, because it seems like our generation, I also was going to mention something about our generation, but millennials in general seem like they are kind of getting punched into a state where we might just be like left leaning forever, because we're never going to get anything out of being right leaning politically.
Right.
So like, kind of being in that state of waiting for the people above you to die so that maybe you can have anything, like, it doesn't make you very sympathetic to like a conservative point of view, but also why would we be? And I was also going to mention, let me find it real quick. This morning, I woke up to a Apple News message, which starting last week, Apple News spotlights are just the best for like, hey, what does like general centrist America want you to think about today? The Apple News spotlight today is, when will the trendy millennial aesthetic become tacky?
Oh,
question mark.
I saw that.
Plus secrets of the 1%'s favorite spa and more weekend reads, which is just the like,
wow.
Hey, remember, rich people, they have a good time, but millennial aesthetic, it's pretty tacky. I hope they realize it soon. Which I think we should start referring to socialism as millennial aesthetic and start pushing that instead.
Let's just rebrand. I like it. That's great.
Yeah. My personal headline for it was, hey, let's bring back shitting on millennials, but even more. Because it feels like, I think, honestly, if Bernie wins or loses at this point, millennials are going to get shit on a lot in the coming years, no matter what.
Yeah.
And I would love to have an advocate for maybe I don't have to die when I'm 60. Maybe I can live past that, but I think the next couple years are going to be really similar no matter what, except for the part where we watch it go downhill instead of slowly sloping towards something that maybe we can fix.
Well, especially if we don't get someone in the White House who actually believes in climate change, it's going to get exponentially worse in the next few years.
If we get Biden or Trump, we're still fucked. It's not
Yeah.
going to be as bad for the next 4 years with Biden, but it'll still be real bad later because his fucking have you read their educational things? I think I might have mentioned that last week.
Whose things?
Okay, I might not have. So Bernie's educational policies, which are one of the things that I think is worth focusing on, are basically said to be worse than Biden's across the board from news outlets because it's expensive. It's $1 trillion expensive. Biden's is wanting to take our current $710 billion educational budget and move it up $40 billion. But the things he wants to do are allow for some special exemptions for free schooling, which sounds like it's just extending slightly more scholarships. Also, keeping in mind, school is so expensive compared to what a lot of our parents might think. Or if you went to school and your parents had to see it, their parents definitely don't think it's that expensive because it was $100 a term or whatever the fuck when they went to school. Not fucking 4,000 minimum. And the proposal was slightly extending scholarships, improving some state of school things, and allowing for.
Oh, Evan is locked out. Apparently, he decided to lock himself out.
Fix that.
I'll be right back.
I'm gonna finish this strangely delicious Pabst while she's doing that.
Okay, I've returned. Evan is now safely inside the apartment.
The Pabst coffee is now safely inside me, so that's perfect. Anyway, so besides extending scholarships slightly, it also talks about just generally improving schools, which who the fuck knows what that means. It is the let's just kind of leave it as it is, but add some money to it example.
Yeah, I mean that's his poll quote from this whole campaign is nothing's fundamentally going to change.
Right. And which is the worst ever.
Yeah.
I mean, you saw that thing I put up, that fucking quality of life will stay the same. That shit. It's that's the worst.
Yeah, please no.
So in comparison, Bernie's what it would be $290 billion expansion of that, while being more expensive, would jubilee all education costs that are currently in debt right now. It would do you know the term jubilee? That's what they did, and I think it was Roosevelt did it, and other people have done it, where they just excuse student debt.
Okay.
They can excuse other debt too, but that's the main one because right now that's what's killing everybody. Then making all portions of state-run schooling are free. So anything that's not a large university that is specialized is free, which tons of people don't want because a lot of people are idiots and want us to privatize our education system, which is the worst but everybody thinks, well, it has to be better than what we have now, which is absolutely not what's going to happen. Like, anybody who has gone through having libertarian ideals and then realizing, oh, right, that's a fantasy. Privatized schools is not a thing that should ever happen. It's like, just use the mental experiment of privatizing anything else, and you will get to where you realize, oh, right, that's a terrible idea. Best case scenario, you have to own your own school in some portion in order to have any say over anything, and libertarians don't like to share, so that's going to turn into like a nightmare eventually, no matter what. It's basically the difference between let's fund and like make schooling available to everyone so we can lift people up who literally cannot afford to do anything, because it includes like school lunch and shit like that. That's just like, yeah, that'll be part of everything. Like, you're not buying anything to become a member of society. You're going to be a member of society, which is the whole point of socialism. And then the Biden plan is, I don't know, fuck them. Like, it's not more responsible to just sit and not pay more money and leave everything the same. That is not a good decision, no matter what, older generations think, millennials think, which is apparently nothing. Anyway.
Yeah.
I'm sure that would have been more coherent had I had more of a chance to research that in more than like 8 or 9 articles, but I'm not paid for any of this, so I'm not doing that.
And also the fact that Bernie's plan is more expensive, like, all that to me says is you're reprioritizing the budget, which needs to happen anyway. And I feel like most reasonable people can agree that we spend like way, way, way too much on our military, and that can obviously be switched around. So, that was, my main thing.
Like, what costs more? Keeping people, like, alive and able to fight in another country, or taking care of them in our country when they're back?
Right.
Like, the amount of military spending that we have can be easily countered if we just stop being assholes. And that shouldn't be that hard, but it clearly is hard for a lot of people to accept.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, one more thing I was going to say about that article. I don't know who wrote it, but on the article itself, they had disabled the comments. So that, obviously, that just screams like, hey, we actually are not trying to start any sort of discourse about this. We just want to tell you what you should probably think about this person. So, way to go, New York Times, on being so transparently biased.
There's a lot of weirdly transparent bias in the last couple months that I do not appreciate, and seems to be incredibly effective.
That's what's so fucking frustrating, is that yes, it does seem like it is very effective, because it's totally dependent on the people who kind of like are half paying attention, which is a lot of people, because a lot of people can't afford to just sit around like I do and just talk about politics a lot of the time. That's a luxury.
I think it's important for us to state that sitting around and talking about politics as something we can afford to do makes it sound like we have money.
Yeah, but I am better off than a lot of people who don't have the time and like the brain space to, sit down and dwell on this shit and just maybe glance at like the headline or something. And those are the people that's taking advantage of.
I absolutely agree. the amount of like
we're opening cans of green beans over here.
It adds a certain something. I think if people come here for anything that isn't opening green beans, they've made a mistake.
Welcome to our podcast kitchen ASMR. All right, clicking on this link. Oh.
Yeah, click on that link. I want you to at least glance over this real quick and tell me what your thoughts are. This is something that, again, I have an incredibly intelligent and, like, generally I would consider, like, considerate both step-grandmother and stepmother. They have both fully fallen in on this bullshit of, well, Elizabeth Warren was the perfect candidate, or at least that's the impression I got, a very good candidate. And I guess Biden will have to do, because that's the only chance for us now, which is the electability conversation is first off garbage, but also the idea of calling Biden electable, or as my grandma mentioned, a good vice president, which is no, absolutely not. Like, read about Biden before you call him a good vice president. But yeah, have you skimmed over this this trash?
Joe Biden will almost certainly name Stacey Abrams as his VP. I guarantee that's not going to happen. I'm so sure that's not going to happen. American people will be far more likely to give Democrats control of Senate with Biden versus other candidates. I don't think so.
They're going... control of Senate with Biden looks like, well, we'll just agree with more of what the Republicans are saying. We'll shake their hand and it'll be fine.
Obama and his coalition will activate to defeat Trump.
That is the stupidest shit I have ever heard.
I would really, really, really love for people to stop trying to activate the Obama coalition. Yeah. I would really love for that to stop happening. It's not about Biden as president. It's not about Biden as president. It is appointing who he appoints.
Fuck.
Because, oh God, because his picks, I'm sure, are going to be super progressive and nice. The debates, oh my God. Number 8.
Uh-huh.
This isn't wrong. The debates will be hilarious. Yeah, but that's not... Actually, you know what? No, they won't. They'll just be fucking sad because I saw somebody's tweet that said basically this, but I'm going to steal it. Trump and his coked up brain are going to run circles around Joe Biden, who can barely string together like 4 sentences right now.
Like, I'll give Trump shit for being an idiot all day, but he's not actually that stupid. Like, he's incredibly selfish, but like he will fuck himself over because he is prideful as fuck. Mm-hmm. But he is so much craftier than fucking Joe Biden. Have you listened to the Anita Hill stuff? Like, the recordings of when Anita Hill was getting grilled by people and he was supposed to be like monitoring the whole thing. He was in charge of that shit. And when it came time for him to like step in on stuff, the Republicans would just say like, well, I'm going to say this stuff cuz I want to. And he was just like, "Oh." That was how tough he was when he was in his prime. And now he's like, he seems like he is already in the jelly bean stage of Reagan, but before he's even president. And Reagan was a piece of shit, but at least he started off like somewhat charismatic. And Biden is like past it already. He's like the opposite of electable, unless your electability is, well, he's a white old man, which in that case, hey, Bernie's a white old man. Do you dislike that he is like ostensibly Jewish? Because that's about it. That's the difference in like their look. Like seeing posters of Sanders and Biden together is the most like, it's an old man parade. Like it's Old White Men, the musical. Like, you can't judge it off of that kind of shit. But fuck, he sucks so much. Like, I was really hoping that this would come down to Bernie and Warren, because at least then Warren will have to like try and approach people who care a lot about things like Medicare, and care a lot about things like, well, universal health care, but care a lot about things that matter to the people who aren't rich, essentially, in order to defeat like the talking points of Sanders. And that whole like process, it's the way that when Inslee dropped out, they just canceled that debate they were going to have about climate change and stopped talking about climate change. That shit went away as soon as the candidate who was interested in it and was pushing it left. And the same shit would happen, like the whole idea of like keeping it on the table at all if Sanders was gone is crazy. If it was Warren and Biden arguing, it would be, well, I'm smarter. And that's not good. Like, that's not helpful for anybody. And it also sets them into the presidential position with like zero things that have to be taken care of. Because it's just, am I smarter? And who gives a shit? Like, that's not important for a president. Agreed.
Yeah, it's just one long sigh. And also, I would like to say that I've seen a lot of like news outlets, and even they've said this a little bit on like Pod Save America, Crooked Media podcast, that like the attacks on Joe Biden, saying that he's like not, basically what I just said, that he's like not all mentally there anymore. Saying that they've been saying that those attacks are like cheap and not valid, and I very much disagree. Like I think it is so sad and disingenuous of the Democratic Party to be taking advantage. I think they're taking advantage of Joe Biden. I don't think that he's like fully in control of his faculties. I think he's a smart dude, but like if you listen to him talk for like 5 minutes, it's like word vomit. It's not good. So I just think I don't think it's invalid to be worried about that.
I also like, people need to keep in mind that
very pro-able-bodied person of you.
You're not in this podcast.
I think having like the reference point of Joe Biden having been somebody who speaks to people in public for like decades is important. This isn't like your grandpa on the stage. This is a guy who has been doing this forever, and the fact that he is making this many mistakes on fucking nothing either means he's having trouble focusing on what he's doing,
including the president of
he's either having trouble focusing on what he's doing, or he's being disingenuous and he's trying to avoid getting caught on it. Like, those two options aren't very good.
That's what I think. And I wouldn't be saying that kind of stuff, and I try not to joke about it because I don't think it's funny, but like I wouldn't be saying that if I didn't have the reference point of him as a lifelong politician who talks to people and makes these speeches. Like I'm not I'm not just like, haha, he's old and can't like string together words. It's like it's concerning. And like you said, we've seen better from him. So, I mean, Bernie just had a heart attack and he's like running around and totally fine. Yeah. So that's the other end of the spectrum, I guess.
Yeah, one of these guys is like recovering from a physical event and seems super with it and very like sharp, and the other one is not seemingly recovering from anything and is walking like fucking do you watch Drag Race at all?
Not recently, no.
So what's her name? Bees in the Trap was on Uh, the pink print. You know who I'm talking about.
I don't think I do, actually. Maybe.
Ah, you call yourself a millennial. We're both
I don't.
terrible.
I don't think I am.
So ask Evan, who is it that's a motherfucking monster? He'll know.
Who is it that's... I don't think he'll know.
No, he'll know. He knows MF Doom. He should know some amount of like celebrity rappers.
Oh, okay. Evan. You wanted to be on the podcast. Now this is your time. What am I supposed to ask him? Who is a motherfucking monster?
Nicki Minaj, what you talked about?
Exactly. I told you he'd know. So Nicki Minaj was on Drag Race for their first episode this season.
Okay. Yeah, I heard about that.
I don't know if it was the dress she was wearing or just how she is now, but she was walking around like her leg span was an inch. Like every time it showed her moving, she looked like a badly animated cartoon. It was very excellent.
That's awesome.
But that is about how I feel Joe Biden is moving around during this whole debate session of like he's like, people love him for I think less reason than they like Nicki Minaj. But he's just like barely making it wherever he's going, and people are just fine with it because we love him so much. And I wish I could get more opinions on like, is it because he's associated with Obama, who everybody still thinks is the best president ever, which I think being the best president of like the last few is still notable, but none of our presidents in the last like decade plus have been any good. And that's just like Clinton was okay, and Clinton was still pretty bad. And that's like a bummer, but I don't know. There's no end to this conversation. We could talk forever about how fucking terrible politicians are, but if you care about any of this stuff and you somehow stumble upon this podcast, just research anything. Like, look at their policies that they're putting forth and think about most of those policies are going to get like half done at best. And then think about like, if you half do any of Biden's policies, it's literally nothing. And if you half do any of Bernie's policies, it's something. Like, it will move us in the right direction. That should be enough for you. Also, as a side note, I wasn't going to talk about this because I'm talking about it too much lately anyway. The whole way that we have set up like the republic system that we have in the US is already based on what socialism is anyway. The whole point of like getting out what you put in is a socialist idea. The difference between socialism and communism is that when you put in, the whole nation or the whole system of communism gets out of it like an equal portion. And that's why people hate communism, because when you get out an equal portion, but you put way more in, well, how's that fair? And I get it. Like, you're allowed to dislike communism. I think you're wrong, but you can dislike it. Socialism, though, is literally what people want when they say they want, like, what capitalism purports to be, except if you're Jeff Bezos and you put in what you put in, what you get back isn't hundreds of billions of dollars. It's like a reasonable amount, because those people will still be rich as fuck, but they won't be destroying our economy over it. They'll just be rich, which seems fair to me, but who knows?
Yeah, yesterday I did a really cool thing and downloaded TikTok. It was a really productive day.
Cool.
But I wanted to look at like political TikToks. I wanted to see what was going on in that arena. And basically I came away just with the knowledge that people have no understanding of what socialism is at all. There was a lot of like people. What was the analogy that somebody used? Like, oh, I can, if I have no gas, I can just go siphon it out of somebody's car because that's socialism.
Jesus.
Just on so many levels, no. So yeah, just I guess go like you were saying, a lot of the things that are already happening here have like the heart of socialism in mind. We have like socialist programs happening right now that are arguably some of the like people's favorite ones.
Well, like this country being set up was basically like, man, a lot of these socialist ideas are great and they still benefit the people that we want to benefit. But if we do something like that, how do we explain the slave part? And then they're like, well, capitalism, that'll work. Like, it's not some altruistic, like, the whole idea of you're worth it because you're getting paid for it is a capitalist thing. And if you feel like that's true, you're wrong. But also, you're not entirely wrong. You're just thinking about it the way socialism does. And you don't want to admit that socialism is something you don't know about. So you just say it sucks. But there are so many books about socialism from so many perspectives. And you only have to read like 2 or 3 of them in your lifetime to get it. And you could do it. Just, I don't know. Go to a library and check it out at some point. I mean, it's kind of too late right now. You're not. Our deadline for voting in Washington State is Tuesday, so nobody's gonna like learn about socialism when this comes out tonight and then make that difference. But still, it's worth looking into because moving forward, we're either gonna turn more and more socialist or we're gonna turn more and more dead. And that's kind of like the stakes in the next decade, even. It's not even that long term. Like you and me are in a state where we're going to be like needing some sort of like general stability in a decade from now, because that's how life works. And when that stability isn't there, and then the next decade it still isn't there, we're kind of just fucked. Like that's not us projecting like, well, we're just not ever going to be successful. That's us projecting there isn't anything for people in our generation unless we get extremely lucky. And that you can't judge that worth by like how hard you work, because people who work incredible hours and are fucked up over it are not like given anything for that unless they're like already rich or already owning something or whatever.
Yeah. And that's not even addressing the whole issue of most people are like one medical emergency away from being in such crippling debt that they can't do anything. That's like everything goes our way, we're alive, we don't get COVID-19 or whatever the fuck, and go on to the next decade. But yeah, that's the situation in America right now, is that most people can't afford, what is it, like a $400 expense right now. So
well, I guarantee you there's a lot of older people a couple blocks from here right now who are actively dying from the COVID business. And first off, because of the way our medicine is, there's nothing we can do about it. There's like 6 months minimum until we can potentially do anything about it. And 6 months is not going to be very good for people who are getting like 10 new noted cases a day. Like that just isn't going to help them. But also like, I don't know. If we had something set up where people were the focus of our government and not the couple of people with a lot of money, this wouldn't have happened like this. Like in Korea, it still got its own problems, but it took a like Christian cult to make their problem get that bad. And here we don't even have that happening as far as I'm aware. we just have regular like infection levels and absolutely no medicine for anybody. And the people up the street who are in their 60s, 70s, and 80s who are dying regularly now, they probably wouldn't be in this position quite as bad if it were like medically available for them to just get help. But they're in like medical facilities where they just can't afford to get help, and now they're fucked. And it's only like, it's still a long time essentially, but it's not in the span of things that long until we're also in that position, and we're not going to have anything if we're sticking with this either. Like the whole nobody's life will change Biden shit is a death sentence eventually. It's just not a good idea to go with. I also got chastised for using hyperbole a lot. I'm not going to stop. I think that when the internet says no hyperbole allowed, I will stop, but it's the way that you talk to people, and I'm using not very much.
Who chastised you for hyperbole?
I was talking to friends. I put up a article because my family had put up an article about how that article I sent you, nobody understands how much they missed with Warren, because only us, the people reading this who understand Warren, are smart enough to really get it. And America's just not like you. We're white and rich and well-educated, and that's just how we live now. Like, we're a minority in our own country, and that's okay. That article I sent to you, I said, hey, what's your opinion on this? And I tried to make it neutral. When I sent it to other people, I said, why don't you understand Warren, you fucking goblins, etc. So, like, there is a difference in how I speak to people when I'm not trying to be even, and it is more extreme than I speak here. But I do slip into it sometimes here because that's how I deal with being frustrated, I guess.
Yeah. It's a frustrating time. I too have been accused of hyperbole a lot lately. Mostly when it has to do with numbers. I'm really bad about taking 2 and turning it into 20. That's like my go-to.
Huh. I haven't seen it.
Not a good character trait.
I'll keep that in mind.
Oh, God. I actually, believe it or not, had a whole other political issue that I wanted to yell about, but I want to know more about these eggs.
Oh, God damn it. Have you seen any more egg posts this week? Have you kept up on the Pinterest action?
Not this week. I didn't do very much Pinteresting, but
okay.
I'll keep you updated on all the eggs.
Yeah, keep me abreast of the egg situation. All right, so let's fly as far away from politics as we can.
Egg.
Hey, sometimes there's an anime, let's say, that comes out that studios don't really expect to be what it is because there's pre-existing material, and they're like, we'll produce that, and then they start making it and they go, oh no. And sometimes the only way to find episodes of it is to go onto Pornhub because that's where people are able to post it. So I watched a show, the first 8 episodes of it, called Ishizoku Reviewers, which means interspecies reviewers.
Ooh.
So rough title already. I will say they hold my opinion of what bestiality is, it seems, which is that if you had a human and an elf in a fantasy story, that is technically bestiality for both, because that is not something that you're biologically equipped to have sex with. Okay. So this is like a fantasy world cartoon. At its base, it is about two they're reviewers. What is it? Interspecies and Ishizoku. I don't know if those match up exactly. I don't know the word, but they review what are called like succubus houses, but succubus in this world is slang for sex worker.
Okay.
So they are like a sort of they do a good job of making the characters not exactly skeevy, just like stereotypical. And it's a guy who's just a human guy with like a ponytail. So take that for what you will. And then an elf guy who's like quite a bit shorter than him, but just kind of looks like an anime protagonist character. And in the first episode, they meet an angel character who's like also very short and has like very like female presenting characteristics, but has both sex organs. Also, for reference, this show has gotten a weird reputation because I would classify it as not sexy at all. Like if you're somebody who has watched porn in the past, this is not like arousing in any way. And I'm fine with like erotica, like drawn stuff. But this is, I think, very purposefully designed to be not especially titillating. That's the idea that I get, but who knows? There's a lot of freaks out there. And then two, it is actually like, despite it being technically explicit for like its content, I think the uncut versions of it, which do exist, show like nipples and that's it. And also it's a comedy like very thoroughly. So anything in it that is like something you could see a screenshot of and be like, that looks like a hentai or something. It isn't. It definitely has like sexual situations, but I would say if you are looking for something to watch as a cartoon porn, I wouldn't watch this. So the setup for it is they meet this angel. The angel has a broken halo because they find him in the woods or something. And I honestly don't know if they identify as he or she. I think it's ambiguous, so I'll just say they. But
Okay.
the angel joins up with them until its halo heals, which I guess takes a while. It's a really dumb conceit, but it works. And then every episode, it's split up almost like a SpongeBob cartoon, where it's like two like things happen. Like there's a story and then a story. And generally it's, hey, we're going to go review this succubus house. And so in like the first episode, I'm trying to remember, I think they go to like an elf house and something else. It might be, I don't remember. I've been watching this for like a couple of weeks because it's coming out as it comes out in Japan. And people are getting the like international translation, so it's just like quick translated to English essentially. The writing is actually surprisingly good for as like dumb as it is. Also, its theme song is incredibly dumb, but like pretty funny as well. So I think to get the atmosphere of this show, in the first episode, the guy is like leaving a succubus house that's an elf house, and he has this like very stereotypical like busty elf with him, and the elf guy shows up and he's like, "What are you doing with her?" Like as she like goes back into the house, and he's like, "That's like somebody's grandma. She's really old. That's gross, man." And I want to say she's supposed to be like 800 or something. And she looks like any other elf character. So the guy is like, doesn't really understand what the problem is. And then they're walking down the street and this like stereotypical grandma character, but with like sex worker appropriate makeup, comes out of a place and starts talking to the elf guy, and they're like regular, like I think he's a regular customer, but that's like his favorite like sex worker in town, I guess. And she's like 80 and is doing all the like, speaking of that Love is Blind show, she's doing the sexy like high talk baby talk thing.
Yeah.
And that kind of is the tone of the whole show, where it's just sort of this like, if you really had a situation where you had all these different fantasy like things mashed into one universe, and then that universe is like devoid of conflict, like it's just a like, we all live together now, it's fine, I don't know, like the evil stereotype evil like fantasy creatures live with them too, like nobody cares, like that's not what the show's about.
Mm-hmm.
But that way they can just do this weird spotlight on all of these like things that you just know is like a basement fetish for everybody. Like every one of these things hits somebody's fetish, and they just like point out all of the like weird gross things that people aren't talking about with each of them, and I kind of love it. They had one episode that was oh, what was it? Oh, right. They had an episode that was actual succubus recently. And that one was just going over, like, you don't actually want this. Like, this is not a thing that is good. But the episode that I want to talk to you about, because it matches our interests, I guess. So one of the best episodes, but also one of the more like rough episodes. There's a Lamia guy who's like a snake man. So everything up to his shoulders is just a snake.
Okay.
And each episode starts with them trying to figure out like, well, what's a place we can go to? Like their job essentially is they'll get the two of them, and the angel kid will get one other person, and they'll go review a place, and they'll give it a score, like a 1 to 10 score.
Mm-hmm.
And the setup is they go from this cafe, or a bar, like typical fantasy like bar hotel thing, I think. They'll go from there to like a place that they're gonna visit, and they'll talk to like the attendant who like runs it, and then it'll skip to each of them kind of giving a summary of their experience there. And then also they usually have some weird like example of like their inner monologue as well, so they'll show scenes of like what they were doing, and they'll show scenes of them like building a bridge, and then the bridge is like half done at the end, and they're like, I'll give it a 6. Like that's sort of the like artistic setup of the show that runs through pretty much every part. So they go with this Lamia guy to a egg layer succubus house, and they're all excited because they want like a sexy bird girl as like the sex workers that they can pick from. And the Lamia guy explains that like, oh yeah, like this is my favorite place ever, because after they lay the eggs and you get to watch them lay the eggs, then you get to bid on the eggs, which is
oh no.
Like, if you think about that, there's all kinds of problems there. And they go into like a lot of detail of like how this would work. Like they point out like, oh no, none of them are fertilized. Like you're not a monster, and like all this stuff. But they get in there, and it's like, it's set up like a half, like a what's it called? An amphitheater. So there's a half circle, and it's like got a raising setup, but behind that is a tank of water, and the tank of water is full of mermen, because they're really excited for it too. And then most of the people there are snake men, and then the 3 main characters are there, and it's all like the most horrifying version of it. One of them is like, she's like a penguin. So it's like, I don't think of what an anime girl / penguin would be. You're probably right. Also walked a lot like Nicki Minaj on Drag Race.
I'd imagine, yeah.
And then there was like a buff alligator woman who everybody's very impressed by. And literally just an alligator standing on 2 legs, but with like beefy arms. And then there's like I want to say one of them is like a sea urchin or something. Which that's as weird as you would think it is. But there's just a lot of like, I don't know. There's a lot of highly disturbing imagery mixed in with all of this stuff. And for whatever reason, I think it might actually be a really good show. Like for all of the incredibly bizarre things that it sounds like are in this show, it also, besides being like pretty well written, it's also like weirdly sex positive, and like its view of sex workers is actually very like, especially for something coming out of Japan, where I feel like they are kind of okay with sexism in general there, at least in their media. Not that we're not, but like you notice it in a lot of Japanese stuff, especially cartoons. They seem like they are giving everybody some level of like dignity somehow in how they're doing it, which is not something I expected from this show.
Yeah.
Anyway, in the realm of things where it's like, oh yeah, I watched this show that's about an elementary school girl who's a doll, probably not, and there's like weird old man spirits living in her house and shit like that. I think this is actually like kind of a wholesome show in a weird way.
It sounds pretty wholesome. I like it.
But there is a weird bit of controversy behind it, of it being like too hot for TV, and so it's like kind of being suppressed. Like that's why the only place I can find it is on Pornhub. Is like so the other conflict is that I guess the places that make it finally got wise to that after episode 8. So I'm going to see if I can find the last 4 episodes and give a more complete opinion on it in the future. But it's called Ishuzoku Reviewers, which is spelled ISHUZOKU. And if you look for Interspecies Reviewers, you can probably find it. I do not want to look for that on my computer, though. And I understand if you don't either, because no matter what you think about the internet, maybe typing interspecies into any browser is a bad idea.
Yeah. Yep.
Unless you want some targeted advertising that is highly upsetting. But yeah, I would look for that. I think that you can just watch it on like Funimation or Crunchyroll's app, but I don't have subscriptions to those, so you know.
So Pornhub it is for now.
Yeah, I mean, you can at least get the first 2/3 of the series on there. I would honestly love to hear your opinion of it if you or you guys feel like watching some weird ass shit.
It sounds like something I'd be into, so I'll probably be giving it a try this week.
Okay. It's a really great, your roommate is sick, everybody at work is sick, and you're stuck in your room and need to put something on while you're like sketching. It's a good option. It's extremely strange. I don't think there is ever going to be an English dub of that show. I think it is a Japan only and apps show. So if you're a dubs only person, I don't think that's going to happen for you, but that's fine. I don't think this needs a lot of widespread viewing, honestly. I just think it's worth talking about because it's pretty entertaining.
Okay, good. I'm a subs person, so.
Yeah, me too. Real ones, no.
The real one.
I think that's it for my topics. Most of it was just complaining and yelling about shit, so.
Yeah, I had one other thing to complain about, but I could just summarize it too. Some dumb congressman from Colorado made a video like brandishing an AR-15 and was basically like, "Hey, Joe Biden and Beto O'Rourke, you want it? Come take it." And all I have to say about that is, number one, in the video, he shows really, really bad muzzle control of the gun. He like at one point points it directly at the camera person. Probably shouldn't have an AR-15. Also, probably shouldn't have an AR-15 if you're threatening to shoot people who try and take your AR-15.
No.
Food for thought.
That sounds bad.
That's all. His name is Ken Buck. If you live in Colorado, please do something about that.
I'm not incredibly anti-gun as much as I have been, but that mostly is a side effect of thinking that being anti-gun at the moment, while extremely useful if people actually are in places to do something about it, could be a little bit harmful if you're just not paying attention and try to get guns out of the hands of people who might need them in an emergency in the future that we can see, just because of how incredibly stupid some people are being in our country at the moment. Like, not saying for anything that you should use it for as a person, just meaning like I'm ideologically against the idea of, well, I need this gun in case somebody with a gun tries to get me, until it turns into things like it kind of has been lately, of people literally like walking guns out and being like, look at all our guns, we have them for you, kind of shit that some of the really like fucked up like sort of right-wingy cults in the US are doing lately. I think gun control, in the sense of like putting real licensing and restrictions on things like anything else in the country, is absolutely vital. Yeah. And I think after that, probably dismantling the NRA entirely is important. And then when everybody is in a less propaganda strewn environment, then we can talk about just disarming as a country, because I would love that.
Right.
But people who are leaning too hard in either direction at the moment are a little bit worrying for me. But I'm not a fucking political scholar, so who the fuck knows?
Well, I am, so I'm free to tell everybody what they should think. If we could even just get the bare minimum of what you just said done, I would be thrilled, and it would make a huge difference. So, it's just like nutcases like Ken Buck who make videos on Twitter brandishing their AR-15 in a public government building, by the way, which is very much illegal. Like, he had it on his wall. You definitely should not have an AR-15 on your wall in like your government building. Just saying. There's like rules and laws against it, but whatever. Just people like that. I think we can do better.
Yeah.
So.
I'm pro most things that don't offer up like very personal information about people to the government. Not out of paranoia, just out of like, there's not a lot of good things they need that for. I'm very in favor of things like the census. I know some people who are complete whack jobs are against things like the census. The only thing that you're actually against if you don't want a census is correctly like noting what the minorities are and how big they are in this country, and like being able to find out how many people are actually in your position. The problems with the census are that while it is run pretty well, like I know a number of people who do work for things like that, and it is taken very seriously, a lot of those numbers can still be fucked with by people, and most of the people who want to fuck with it want to discount people who are non-white in the same way that people who fuck with elections want to primarily discount people who are non-white or people who are too left-leaning, and that sucks because it just shows an inaccurate view of our country, and it gives more fuel to people who don't want to admit that they're not entirely right about the way things should work. So if you're pro things like getting rid of taxes or the census or any of that kind of shit, you're on the wrong side of that. You should probably be more okay with everybody helping everybody, because isn't that kind of common sense?
One would think.
It seems,
and as political
Christian
scholars,
also,
both of us, I think we can come from a place of authority on this.
Absolutely. When I was getting my degrees, I was thinking, someday I'll tell tens of people about what I think, and they'll know.
We do have a whole 5 or 6 subscribers on YouTube now.
Wow,
so,
it jumped up.
Thanks.
Nice.
Thanks, guys.
It's only going to get bigger from here. You watch.
We'll have to throw we'll have to do another After Dark once we get to 10.
Oh yeah, we'll get nasty with it. You'll see. I'll try and keep some stuff on the back burner for an After Dark. I'm sure there's plenty.
Me too.
None of this interspecies stuff. That's for suckers. We're talking the hard shit. In fact, as soon as we're off this podcast, we're going to test something to see how bad it can get, and then you'll see. Yeah, look forward to that.
Yeah, I am. I'm really looking forward to that.
All right. Do you want to call it? I think that we've done enough here.
Now that we've solved all the world's problems, I think I'm going to call it.
Fucking finally. Bejabbers.